We're going to have a look at some U-boat transmissions. In each case, it's going to be exactly the same message, but looking at transmissions using different methods. So the basic method would be by sending Morse code. And the message that we're going to send is the following. It says, convoy of 16 to 20 steamships at grid reference CA9133, signed by U-boat U999. So we'll hear that sent in plain Morse first, which would have been the original form that messages were sent in. We'll see how long it takes to send in plain Morse. So I'm going to send that now. So as you can hear, that gives appreciable time in which to direction find the signal. So this was improved by using lookup tables, and basically phrases were printed in a lookup table book, and for a given phrase there'd be a 4-digit number that represented that phrase. So for any message you'd create a composite message. So for that message we'd have 0516 4545 8152. So that would come like this. So that's shorter, and it also has the added benefit that it is hidden somewhat by virtue of having used a lookup table. If you don't have that table, you don't know what that message is. But that was long enough for the Allies to detect, and by capturing lookup tables they were able to decode these messages. So the next step was to put those messages through Enigma, and this then created a much more secure message. So that transmission through Enigma would sound like this. So again, short and very much more secure through having been encoded in Enigma. But still, that message was long enough to be direction found, and submarines could be detected and destroyed, and evidence could be collected from the debris, or crew could be captured, and information on how Enigma worked was collected. And this is how the Enigma code was broken. So means were found by the Germans to make a much shorter transmission, and they developed in the mid-1940s, 43, 44, a system called Kurier. And we'll listen to a transmission using the Kurier system, and this is exactly the same message as we've heard before. This is exactly the same. Listen to this. So that was a transmission in Kurier. We'll hear it again. So that transmission contains exactly the same information. The transmission is made only once. The repeat which I did there was not typical. You would not normally have a repeat of that transmission. There would be one transmission made, and stations would be listening on the allotted frequency, and that transmission would be captured on a phosphor tube of an oscilloscope. And would then be decoded. So although that sounds like a computer code, of course in the 1940s there was no such device as a computer that could decode that. So it was done manually. The signal was received on a receiver. The audio output was rectified with a full wave rectifier, and then the received rectified signal was sent to an oscilloscope, and as soon as the signal was received, a camera was triggered and the oscilloscope trace was captured on film. That was then sent to the German Signal Intelligence Department. They would look at that under a microscope, and they would derive the waveform, which would contain all the characters that had been sent in Morse. So very clever, very, very short, very difficult to intercept, and the frequency was changed each time. So every time a transmission was made, a new frequency was used using a frequency table. Now, had this system been in use early in the war, it's very unlikely that the Allies would have been able to capture the signals and derive the Enigma code from it. So it's very fortunate that this was quite a late development for us anyway. It was very fortunate, but it did highlight the need for very advanced means of direction finding. And it's advances like this very rapidly through the Second World War that focused the attention on developing effective direction finding systems. And this is partly why the development of the elephant cage arrays were felt to be so important.